I call to order the meeting of the Verona Common Council for Monday, December 11th, 2023 at 7 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we'll have the roll.
She is attending online. Emmett? Shay? I'm here. Dr. Long?
Here.
Kemp?
Here.
Posey?
Here.
Holyfield?
Present.
Present.
7 present. Mr. Mayor, 1 online.
Yes, and for attendance purposes, Alder Helmke is here and counts. Next, we'll move on to item 4, which is public comment. Do we have any members of the public wish to speak? Seeing shaking heads in the audience, we will move on to item 5, which is approve the minutes from the November 13th, 2023 Common Council meeting. Questions, comments, or motions to approve? Motion by Alder Kimmett. Is there a second? Second by Alder Cronin, I think. Last chance for corrections. Seeing no hands. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the November 13th, 2023 Common Council meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And the minutes are approved. Under Mayor's business, I have one item, which I'm going to pull up right now. This is the Monarch Pledge Days Proclamation, which I will now read to you. Whereas the monarch butterfly is an iconic North American species whose multi-generational migration and metamorphosis from caterpillar to butterfly has captured the imagination of millions of Americans, and whereas both the western and eastern monarch populations have seen significant declines, with less than 1% of the western monarch population remaining, while the eastern population has fallen by as much as 90%, and whereas the city of Verona recognizes that human health ultimately depends on a well-functioning ecosystem and biodiverse regions that can better support food production, healthy soil and air quality, and can foster healthy connections between human and wildlife, and whereas cities, towns, and counties have a critical role to play to help save the monarch butterfly, and the city of Verona is striving to become a leader, and whereas on December 11th, 2023, I, Luke Diaz, hopefully we'll get that typo corrected, signed the National Wildlife Federation Mayor's Monarch Pledge and have officially committed to taking meaningful action to protect the monarch butterfly. And whereas the city of Verona has committed to planting and maintaining pollinator-friendly gardens throughout city-owned property, and whereas every resident of Verona can make a difference for the monarch by planting native milkweed and nectar plants to provide habitat for the monarch and pollinators in locations where people live, work, learn, and play and worship. And therefore, now I, Luke Diaz, by virtue and of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Verona, do hereby proclaim the months of April through October as Mayor's Monarch Pledge Days, and encourage all residents to participate in community activities that support and celebrate monarch conservation. And that was all I had. Well, I actually had one. That was the first thing I had. I had one additional thing. Everyone should have received an email from Attorney Brian Kleinmeyer about a potential class action lawsuit that we are not part of. I had talked to Mr. Kleinmeyer before the meeting, and it was kind of up in the air whether it should have come before a council agenda. However, we would have had to call an emergency meeting for like Thursday, and I was concerned that everyone would be irritated if we had to have an emergency meeting where we just followed the attorney's advice anyway. However, if you disagree and would have rather had a meeting for that, definitely let me know so I can be guided by that in the future. But that's all I have under Mayor's business. We'll move on to item 7, which is announcements. Any announcements from the council? Seeing shaking heads, we'll move on to item 8, which is the administrator's report. Mr. Olick.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a few things tonight. One, just a friendly reminder, if you do want to request staff out in the field or anything like that for various things that go on, if you could please just route it through me to make sure I have eyes on it and we can follow through appropriately as we need to. Please do so. Appreciate it. Number 2, tax bills went out, and in this particular case, tax bills went out with a bonus return envelope, which is completely useless. So in the tax bills, you'll see a windowed envelope There's no form of origami that gets anything to match up with the window. If you're thrifty, feel free to keep the envelope. You can otherwise recycle it, but otherwise, it was an error on the part of the printer. They mistook it for a different run for a different community as they were doing tax bills, so it was a mistake, and we apologize for that. So lastly, just be aware, 2 of our employees had children in the last couple of weeks. Mitch is a proud father of a young son, and he's the Human Resources Coordinator, and also Clerk Holly Licht had a daughter here this last week. So everybody's doing well, everybody's home now, and we wish them the very best, especially over the holiday season. Being new parents, they're going to be tired, but all good. We wish them all the best of luck. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
And I would also point out that we weren't charged for those envelopes either.
Thank you.
That
Yeah,
was
there you
the
go.
first thing when I heard. I'm like, we weren't charged for that, were we? Any questions for Mr. Aulick? Seeing no questions, we'll move on to item 9, which is the engineer's report. Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Not a lot of updates tonight. I just wanted to note for the North Booster Station project, the bid opening was December 1st, and that is on the agenda tonight for recommendation of approval. And then I wanted to mention and just remind folks that there is an event coming up at the library on Thursday, December 14th at 6:30, and that is a smart residential salt use presentation focusing on water softeners and winter de-icing. We found that this was a popular one kind of at this time of the year, and it will cover tips for using salt on your property to safely remove ice during the winter and to soften water year-round, preventing the costs of excess salt being transported to aquatic ecosystems. And then we'll also talk about some of the initiatives that local municipalities have been implementing to save money and reduce the harmful impacts of salt while striving to keep our transportation services safe for travelers. So with that, I can take any questions.
Any questions for Ms. Fisher? Seeing shaking heads, we'll move on to item 10, which is committee reports. First up, we have 10A, which is Finance Committee. Alder Kemp.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion for the payment of the bills, the amount of $898,210.92.
Motion by Alder Kemp. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Posey. Alder Kemp.
Yes, for this cycle, we had a payment to Alliant Energy in the amount of $44,555 for our electric bill. We had a payment to JT Engineering in the amount of $62,611 in engineering costs. We had our payment to Verona Area Community Theater for our dance payment, which was $31,365. And finally, a payment of $275,084 to AECom for engineering services.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on the motion to pay the bills? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of paying the bills in the amount specified signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Finance?
Nothing further.
Excellent. We'll move on to 10B, which is Plan Commission. Alder Posey.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 23-036, approving a condominium plat to create 2 units located at 161 Horizon Drive.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Second by Alder Kimmett. Alder Posey.
The Plan Commission voted 5-0 to recommend the Common Council approve the condominium plat to create 2 units located at 161 Horizon Drive.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of resolution number 23-036, condominium plat to create 2 units located at 161 Horizon Drive, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Posey.
To make a motion to approve resolution number 23-037 for a conditional use permit to allow a professional office land use for units 6 and 21 located at 161 Horizon Drive.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Second by Alder Cronin. Alder Posey.
Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 4th, 2023, with no comments from the public. Plan Commission voted 5-0 to recommend the Common Council approve the professional office land use for units 6 and 21 located at 161 Horizon Drive.
Thank you. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Alder Tucker Lung.
The only quick comment I wanted to make was, this was brought up during the Plan Commission meeting, and I agreed with it, is that it seems like we're doing a lot of conditional use permits for this area to allow professional office. And it's maybe possible that this area is zoned incorrectly. So when we look at zoning for things going forward, especially comprehensive plan time and whatever, we should take a look at if this property is zoned correctly.
Thank you. Other comments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of resolution number 23-037, granting a conditional use permit to allow professional office land use for units 6 and 21 located at 161 Horizon Drive, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Posey.
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution number 23-038 for a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through for a car wash on Lot 28 in the Liberty Business Park with the following condition, that the conditional use permit shall become effective upon the applicant acquiring the property.
Motion by Alder Posey. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Touche. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Alder Kimmett. We are,
There were like multiple car wash applications, right, for Liberty?
yeah, I guess I would address that. We're generally not allowed to consider other applications. We're just considering this one.
I just know there's already like one across the street.
Yeah, so there was if you're asking what happened to the other one, and that was at the Plan Commission, there were some concerns about traffic
Okay,
with that one that were not present with this one.
Got it.
So
thank you.
other than that, we don't have a car wash density ordinance, so. Alder Posey.
I did also need to add that the Plan Commission held the required public hearing on December 4th, 2023, with no comments from the public, and the Plan Commission voted 5-0 to recommend the Common Council approve the drive-through for a car wash on Lot 28 in Liberty Business Park with the conditions specified.
Great. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor of resolution number 23-038, granting a conditional use permit to allow a drive-through for a car wash on Lot 28 in the Liberty Business Park with the conditions specified, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Plan Commission?
Nothing further.
Excellent. We move on to 10C, which is Public Safety and Welfare Committee. Alder Hoxt.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to approve an application for a liquor license premise amendment from ICE Inc., located at 451 East Verona Avenue. Michael O'Brien, agent, contingent upon final approval from the building inspector and fire department.
Motion by Alder Hoxt, second by Alder Touche. Alder Hoxt.
Thank you. ICE Inc. is requesting to amend their premise description to include the new addition to the ice arena. Staff recommend approval of the amendment as proposed. Final approval will be contingent upon building inspector and fire department approval.
And that contingency was part of the motion?
Correct.
Okay, and that was the understanding of the second? All right, we're all good. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion?
One quick
Oh,
comment.
sorry, Mr. Alec.
No problem. Just for your own information, this evening I did receive an email from Lee Jordan of the Chamber of Commerce supporting the application.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. All those in favor of granting the application for a liquor license premise amendment from ICE Inc. located at 451 East Verona Avenue, Michael O'Brien, agent, with the contingency specified, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Hoxt.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 23-039, naming private roads for 911 purposes at 1979 Milky Way.
Motion by Alder Hoxt, second by Alder Touche. Alder Hoxt.
Thank you. Currently, all of Epic is under the address 1979 Milky Way. By adding private road names with an Epic, it is easier and quicker for emergency vehicles to find the exact location of an emergency.
Makes sense. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion?
I just want to add, this is a multi-step process for them. After we do this step, it'll go to Dane County, it'll get platted. This is not going to be quick, put simply, but something they're working towards.
Gotcha. Other questions or comments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of resolution number 23-039, naming private roads for 911 purposes and 1979 Milky Way, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Safety?
Nothing further, thank you.
Excellent. We move on to 10D, which is Public Works, Sewer and Water Committee. Alder Touche.
Thank you. Yes, I am making a motion under 10D1 to approve a traffic signal, traffic signal operations service agreement with AECom not to exceed $400,000.
Motion by Alder Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Tucker Long. Alder Touche.
Currently, traffic signals are manually managed through a contract with the City of Madison. As part of construction efforts for County Highway PD, the city received funds to install software at 6 traffic signals located in and around County Highway PD to allow for real-time remote management of signals. Per the service agreement, AECom will manage, monitor, and adjust traffic signals as needed, as well as coordinate future grant applications to expand the city's traffic signal management and intelligent transportation system. This was recommended by the committee. Approval of the signal operations agreement with AECom is for 5 years, starting December 12th of this year, not to exceed $400,000. Thank you.
Thank you for that explanation. Questions or comments on this motion? Alder Posey.
I'll just comment that I think this is really great that we're going to be able to use this technology to manage our traffic in the city, because it's definitely becomes a headache for everybody at certain times. So I really appreciate that we're looking at this.
Other questions or comments? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the traffic signal operations service agreement with AECom in the not-to-exceed amount as specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Alder Touche.
Thank you. 10D2, I'm making a motion to approve awarding project number 2022-109, North Pump Station and Electrical System Update.
Motion by Alder Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alder Tucker Long. Alder Touche.
Just want to add there is a not-to-exceed cost of $581,100.
And that was the understanding, the second as well? Yes. Excellent. Alder
Thank you.
Touche.
Received 5 bids for this project. The lowest bid came in from Rhodes Brothers Incorporated at the not-to-exceed amount of $581,100. Based on references and knowledge of subcontractors, public works staff, and contracted engineers, are of the opinion that Rohde Brothers, now I'm saying it right the first time, Rohde Brothers Incorporated has the personnel, equipment, and financial assets necessary to complete the North Pump Station and electrical system update. Thank you.
Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the awarding project, approving the project number 2022-109, North Pump Station and Electrical System update in the amount specified, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Anything further from Public Works?
That is all for tonight.
Excellent. We'll move on to item 11, which is new business. First up, we have 11.1, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the appointment of election inspectors and special voting deputies for the 2024-2025 election term. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. This is near and dear to my heart as a former clerk. Election inspectors and special voting deputies conduct our democracy. They staff and assist with election administration duties, and every 2 years, a list comes before this body to appoint them for a 2-year term, and that's what we're doing tonight. In this case, the term starts on January 1, 2024, and ends on December 31st, 2025. Recommend approval.
Questions, comments, or motions on this one?
Move to approve.
Motion by Alder Touche to approve the election inspectors and special voting deputies. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, I think, by Alder Kemp. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the appointment of election inspectors and special voting deputies for the 2024 to 2025 election term as specified in the packet, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. Next, we'll move on to 11.2, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the memorandum of understanding between the City of Madison and the City of Verona. That is the transit service agreement for Madison Metro. Mr. Aulick.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a MOU which engages the City of Verona, which we have already done in the past with Madison Metro for transit services agreement. This particular agreement oftentimes will hit the peak hours of transit to and from Epic systems, but it also does run through the downtown. As part of recent discussions and agreements between the City of Verona, Epic, and Madison Metro, that service will be increased in 2024. So there will be more runs on both in the morning and in the afternoon, evening for this service. So the cost of the service is covered by Epic Systems, and so I recommend approval.
Or no motion before the body. Questions, comments, or motions?
Move to approve?
Motion by Alder Touche. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Alder Kimmett. Motion before the body. Questions or comments on this motion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the memorandum of understanding between the City of Verona and the City of Madison, that is a transit service agreement for Madison Metro, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And that motion passes. We'll move on to 11.3, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the use of money in the Affordable Housing Fund. Alder Tucker Long.
Yes. So if you want to take one of these and pass them down. Yeah. Okay. So I have a quick little presentation for you here today. And Jamie's running it off his computer, so you'll have to excuse the interruptions to tell him to switch slides. One of the things I have been hearing a lot about is how expensive it is to live in Verona. And so we do have an affordable housing fund, which has quite a bit of money in it. And so I've been doing a bunch of research on what we could do with this money and what would be helpful to do with this money. And I just wanted to share an idea that I've been working on along with Rye here. And yeah, so go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so just to give you a little idea of where we are right now. So I did some research into apartment buildings in Verona, and right now our cheapest non-restricted, like non-income restricted studio apartment is at the Prairie Crest Apartments. It's a studio apartment, so 0 bedroom, and it costs $1,290 a month. Next slide. So our newest non-restricted studio apartment is at the Mill District Apartments, which were built this year. And again, 0 bedroom studio apartment, it costs $1,550 per month to rent. So going along with best budgeting practice, assuming that you have no student loans or any other debt, which is not a common situation nowadays because a lot of people have student debt or a car loan or something, but assuming you have no debt whatsoever, it's recommended that rent should be no more than 30% of your income. Now, if you have student loans or debt, it should be even less than 30% of your income, but I'm using 30% for right now. Can we go back just for a second? Sorry. So in order to live at the Prairie Crest Apartments, in order to be able to afford that studio apartment, you need to be making $51,600 a year, or $24.81 per hour. For the Mill District Apartments, you need to be making $62,000 per year, or $29.81 per hour. So who can't afford to live in a studio apartment in Verona? So starting at the lower end, we've got baristas, veterinary assistants, a shift manager at a hardware store, and just so you know, all of these are open job positions for our area currently. A CNA at Capitol Lakes, restaurant manager at Wendy's, general laborer at Baker Manufacturing. Next. A behavioral health care coordinator with a master's degree at Journey Mental Health Center, a school bus driver, and giving our school bus driver shortage, this is one we should especially take a look at. A medical assistant at UW Health, cell tower technician, maintenance technician with the state of Wisconsin, an accountant at Johnson Health Tech. And then the people on this screen can afford Prairie Crest apartments, but not not the Mill District apartments. So a computer operational analyst for WPS, respiratory therapist at Unity Point Health, an IT support specialist at Creative Financial Staffing, an entry-level attorney, and a civil engineer. So as you can see, there are a lot of people who cannot afford a studio apartment in Verona. So what help is out there to make housing more affordable? So right now, we have 2 income-restricted housing apartments that are available to rent. The classic property requires that you earn $25,650 or less, or which comes out to $12.33 per hour less, and rent there for the studio apartment would be $636 per month. Schoolhouse Yards requires that you make $51,300 or less, or $24.66 per hour or less, and then rent for a 1-bedroom. They don't have studio apartments, so I went with their smallest 1-bedroom is $1,100 per month. So this is leaving us with a gap in affordable housing. So the people on the screen here are not able to qualify for any of the income-restricted housing help that we have in town, but they also can't afford to live in the studio apartments in town. And just for reference, the gap of people we're talking about here is 100 to 130% of Dane County's per capita income for 2022. So what could we do? The Super 8 on Horizon Drive is for sale. It's been completely remodeled over the last 10 years and owner occupied. It currently has 43 units and sits on approximately 1.53 acres. It's listed for sale at $2.3 million. So could we afford to buy this? Our Affordable Housing Fund has approximately $2.6 million, $1.9 million from the closure of TIF 6, and another $700,000 by August 2024 from the extension of TIF 4. So what does this building need if we buy it? The roof is not currently leaking, but the roof is old, so it would need a new roof. The owner got a quote from a local company in Janesville, and he said that the quote was for $65,000. So what I've done here is I've put together some calculations to see if we can afford this. And just to give you an idea of what I'm doing with these numbers is I'm taking all of the numbers and then converting them to what I call worst-case scenario numbers. So I'm doubling or tripling them and rounding up. So in the case of the roof, I know that costs constantly are going up for construction, so I tripled the number and then rounded up. So to see if we could afford it, I used the number $200,000 to replace the roof. We took the City of Verona building inspector through the property. He says the property is in good condition and actually won't need much to be usable as apartments. So what would we need to convert the hotel rooms into apartments? We would need to add window safety locks. We would need to expand the sprinkler system from the hallway where it is currently into each of the bedrooms. We would need to add an additional exit sign to the center of the main hallways. There's a possibility, depending on what kind of cook service we would be putting in, that we may need to add new outlets, but we may not. And then 3 of the rooms have jacuzzi tubs in that we would want to take out. Next. Some other things that we should do but don't have to according to the regulations for apartments, it would be to add like a two-burner induction cooktop. Right now they have small hotel-sized refrigerators in them, and we would want to replace those, or I would want to replace those with refrigerator, like a real refrigerator and freezer full size. Add washers and dryers. The hallway carpeting is functional but old, so could be used or could be replaced. And then the hotel kitchen on the first floor, where they have the breakfast area, if we wanted to allow the guests to use it, or if we wanted to allow events to use the space and use it, we would need to add a grease trap to the hotel kitchen. So I know the first question is probably going to be, how would we manage this? And we have 3 different options for managing this. We could hire a property management company. We could put an RFP out for a nonprofit to manage this, or we could hire new city staff to manage this. I'd like to be clear that this proposal does not imply that any existing staff would be running this. This would all be run by new people who are hired for this purpose. And how would we pay for all of this? So the initial property purchase would come from the Affordable Housing Fund. there is enough in the Affordable Housing Fund to cover the roof and the initial construction on the rooms. The ongoing costs would be completely self-funded through the rent of the property. And I'm going to walk you through the numbers I used to come up with this. First, I'm actually going to tell you why this property. So the Super 8 is uniquely situated in town to be a great spot for a multi-tenant use. First off, it's already set up for multi-tenant use. It has a security system on the building, so you have to use like a key fob to get in already. There's no conflicting usage with single-family dwellings. It's right by a bus stop, and it's within easy walking distance of so many things. Can we go on the next? So it's within easy walking distance of a grocery store, elementary school and middle school, a hardware store, Badger Prairie Needs Network, which is our food pantry, and also has caseworkers and social workers for assistance. It's within walking distance of multiple daycares, the library, the post office, a medical clinic, multiple banks, and also within walking distance of many of our employers in town who are looking to hire people. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you about the numbers I used to calculate if we can afford this. So again, we went through, the hotel has a relatively high occupancy rate, but we still went through and took their actual utility numbers and then doubled them. So we could cover Alliant Energy and MG&E, as well as high-speed internet through Charter, waste management services, and water and sewer for a total of $75,600 per year. Looking at staffing, no, go ahead. Yeah, looking at staffing, they have a full-time cleaning person currently, and if we were to keep them on, we would want to, my preference would be to bring everyone on full-time. And so I went through and took a look at salary ranges, and these are just estimates based on the highest salary range offered for this position for open positions in Dane County. And so $50,000 a year for a cleaning person, $80,000 for a full-time maintenance person who would also be a public works staffer. In talking with companies that maintain apartment buildings and also with our public works staff on how much work it takes to maintain other buildings that we have in our care, it was determined that we wouldn't necessarily need a full-time maintenance person. And so it could benefit the public works staff as well because it would be able to take over some of the existing need for additional public works staff, but would be fully paid for by the hotel project. So that would be $80,000 a year. And then we would need an apartment manager, someone who would handle placing people, you know, doing background checks and checking qualifications for being in the rent. This skill set for an employee overlaps almost identically with a caseworker, and the police department is interested in a part-time caseworker at some point in the future, and so this full-time position could cover both of those items, but again, would be fully paid for by the the hotel project. So $60,000 a year for that. In addition, obviously, the city has costs above just the salary, and so got actual numbers from city staff for what that would cost. And so our staffing total for these 3 full-time employees would be $293,500. So one of the things we want to make sure we have is a maintenance reserve, not only money for you know, light bulbs and if the HVAC goes out and, you know, replacement of, you know, cook surfaces or whatever, but we also want to have a maintenance reserve just in case something bad happens kind of fund. So Madison Housing Authority uses 12% of rent in order to calculate out what a safe maintenance reserve is. So I took a look at what the highest end market rate rent for an apartment would be, and it was around $2,000 a month, and so I calculated a maintenance reserve for a $2,000 a month apartment unit, even though we wouldn't be charging that. And then I rounded it up, so recommending a reserve total of $150,000, just to make sure we absolutely have more than we would need in the reserve. And so this puts our total budget costs at about $519,100 a year. And so with that kind of costs ongoing per year, we could be looking at, for rent, if this is a project managed by city employees, rent would be about $1,010 if we keep everything as either studios or one-bedrooms. If we want everything to be a one-bedroom and maybe some two-bedrooms, we could drop it down to 30 units and charge about $1,450 on average. Or if we drop everything down to two-bedroom units and have 20 units, we would need to charge on average $2,175 a month for rent. So you'll see on the right-hand side, you can see how that compares to schoolhouse yards, which is income restricted. So their one-bedrooms and two-bedrooms are slightly less than what we're talking about, but well within the same range of what we're talking about. And then the Mill District apartments, you can see, are well above what we're discussing, charging. And one thing that would make our units more affordable is that our rent would include all utilities and internet, whereas schoolhouse yards and Mill District apartments do not include any utilities or internet. Next. So if we hire a management company to run this for us, it would increase the amount of rent we would need to charge because the management company costs would be more. I did get an actual quote from a property management company in town here for what they would charge us for managing the apartment. There are a number of costs that are estimated with property management company as well, because they charge based on actual hours for maintenance and things like that. And so I based it off an estimate of half-time. So like 20 hours a week of maintenance and snow removal and whatever else the property management company would be covering. Sorry. Again, you can see we're still in line with schoolhouse yards, which is income restricted, and also still under what the Mill District apartments would be charging. And again, this includes all utilities and internet access. So what are the risks if this project doesn't work? So if we buy this property and we try to set it up as apartments, and for whatever reason it becomes too expensive, or it doesn't work, or we decide it's not the right thing for us to be doing, we have relatively low risk with this property because it's a really great piece of land, and it's already set up as a hotel. And if we convert it into apartments, we can now sell it as an extended stay hotel, which increases the value of the property. Or we can just sell it for the land because it's in a very desirable area of town for businesses. So it's a relatively low risk if we buy this property. So the reason I'm bringing this today is because the property is currently for sale, and obviously properties in Madison or in Verona don't say for sale forever. So I wanted to discuss what people think of this project, whether or not it might be a good idea to purchase the property. And one of the things that we could do is purchase the property and then decide later how we want to manage everything else going forward. The only thing I would recommend is looking at replacing the roof sooner rather than later, but we do not need to change anything else about it until we figure out whether or not we want to run it or have a nonprofit run it or a management company. And so forth. But today I would like to discuss using the Affordable Housing Fund to purchase the property.
Before I open it up to general discussion, yeah, just to clarify, this is definitely I don't know, temperature check, gut check, where it is. Alder Tucker Long obviously did an extensive amount of research, which is pretty impressive. But obviously, if we were going to move forward with this, it would involve, some staff time doing research and coming up with like a final proposal. And so before, staff gets sent off to spend their time, I would like to make sure that see if there's council support for it. Or if people want to use the affordable housing funds for something else. But anyways, open for discussion. Alder Touche.
I just have a question on the presentation. You were comparing this to schoolhouse yards, just pulling up schoolhouse yards. Their square footage is 615 to 993 square feet. My quick Google search came in with a typical hotel room being around 300. Do you know what they are at this hotel?
Yes, I can give you that. Hang on. So square footage obviously varies from room to room, but, and Rye, jump in if you have these numbers faster than me. Okay. Okay, most of the rooms have a living room space, or a living space of 12 foot by 16 foot. Let's see. Okay, and then the bathrooms are 7 by 6. Oh, right, not including the tub. Yep, workable space. Sorry. And then they all have an additional, like, walkway area with, like, a sink and things in it, and a little closet. So it's going to be about 430 square feet, if I'm doing the math quickly in my head correctly. But there are also one-bedroom apartments, and the jacuzzi suite are almost double in size. And there are adjoining rooms that we could, without any construction, make into a double-sized apartment.
Mr. Clymer, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted it to be clear that, I mean, if you are going to use the affordable housing money that I think is generated from the TIF districts, there are statutory requirements on how that money needs to be used. And then one of the things we'd also have to research is, if it doesn't work, how can it be sold? And so I think, not to stop you from having this discussion, but just keep in mind that those different concepts would have to be looked at by staff.
Right, it's my understanding there's certain levels you can set the rent at, you know, and things like that. But this is kind of part of the discussion we're having, whereas, and if there's enough momentum to move forward, I mean, you'll know your next assignment then. Mr. Olick.
I have just a couple of quick comments. First of all, Alder Tucker Long and Alder Kimmett did a lot of research and homework and visits and things like that, and I appreciate all the time and work that they put in to what you saw right now. So I sincerely appreciate that. I guess one thing, just taking a 50,000-foot view on this. Now, if you look at the finances, this is now going to be the second TID that we're closing and extending in order to have an affordable housing fund. So one of the things we might want to think about as a body is a policy on what we think this money should be used for, when it should be used. And that way, it's much more, hey, we got everything in place, we're ready to go, we have a committee assigned, whatever that committee looks like. It could be the CDA, the Community Development Authority, which if you read the definition of that, this fits right in there, or a finance committee, public works, you know, things like that. But I think it's best considered by a subunit with rules in place and then brought before the body and then considered. Now, I absolutely 100% agree that the timing on this does not suit well for an approach like that. I will give you that. But going forward, I think it's a steady, pre-approved approach by the governing body. We extended TID. It gets put in a fund restricted for workforce or affordable housing. And then we have rules in place that a committee, you know, goes and does a research like what you two had just done, and then we proceed from there. That's my only comments. I again, appreciate all the research and thought put into this. It's just for going forward, we should have a steadied approach.
I got Alder Kimmett had her hand up, then Alder Cronin, and then Alder Kemp. Oh, good. Oh. Alder Cronin, Alder Kemp, Alder Touche.
So I would just share that I am absolutely in favor of this, given how restricted we are in the state and how few tools municipalities really have to be able to carve out space for affordable housing. There's just a great article in the Cap Times about this, and this approach is one of the very few that municipalities have. And it's anybody who has run for public office in this city has heard from everybody about how Verona is not affordable. And I think we're going to see that as, kids start graduating and realizing that they can't afford to live in the city that they grew up in. I do understand the administrative challenges and the legal challenges, but I think this is definitely something that we should explore.
Alder Kemp, then Alder Touche.
How long has the building been for sale?
I think 6 weeks? 2 months, so maybe 8 weeks.
Okay, no, and they're not using it right now as a hotel at all, or are they?
No, it's currently running as a
Okay.
hotel and has been this whole time.
And the operator lives there.
The
Okay,
operator
all right.
lives there, along with his 2 sons who go to Verona High School. And just a little anecdotal information, he's not selling it because it's not doing well or because it needs a lot of work. He's selling it because his wife's job is in Illinois, and that's where their house is, and they want to be in the same place.
Okay.
But they did keep their kids in our school district because they liked it, yes.
I had a second question, and I think Alder Cronin might have hit on it. If it comes back to me, I will bring it up, but I can't remember.
Alder Touche.
Thank you. I'm interested in exploring this. It's interesting. I'll just say these schoolhouse yard, the photos and what I'm seeing are very nice. Obviously, it's new, it's nice.
Yeah.
Which
problem-
also includes,
The problem is, though,
One
they're...
speaker at a
Oh,
time,
sorry,
please.
sorry.
and so when I'm looking at this, which also includes, looks like a garage parking for 1 car, maybe 2, is if we're comparing the possibilities of this hotel to the rents collected by the schoolhouse yard, excuse me. I just want us, when we go through this journey, that we actually be honest with ourselves about, I've lived in a hotel for 3 months with it because of a job change, and wasn't great. But it was necessary, and as I picture anyone just trying to make that their residence, when I look at what Schoolhouse Yards offers, I'm like, oh, it's pretty nice for a studio apartment. When I think of, I'll just say a non-remodeled hotel room, obviously they would need some work. I don't know. I'm nervous that they're going to be small and pretty cramped. And if we're comparing rents to Schoolhouse Yards, then I think we need to, bring in some outsiders to help evaluate what is the likelihood we're going to get the rents and achieve what we're trying to achieve. Because I think if they're smaller, older, maybe not offering the same or similar living experience, then, we need to be honest with ourselves as much as we're trying to accomplish things. I think whether the rents are too high or living conditions may not be desirable, I don't know. Obviously, people want to live and possibly on their own and whatnot. But again, I'm interested in that, but I would like to see that kind of level of consideration before we do anything. Thank you.
Alder Kemp.
I remembered, first, I want to go over there myself and kind of take a look, so we can chat about how to make that happen. Second, there are other communities that have done something similar to this. I know that there are communities that have, where the city is, running workforce housing. Have you guys spoken with or toured any of their facilities? And more specifically, have any communities used or retrofitted a hotel that's similarly suited to achieve what you're trying to achieve here?
Alder Tucker-Long.
I'm going to try to remember all the questions you just asked. Let me know if I forget one. Okay. Yes, other communities have retrofitted hotels and office buildings for housing. most notably on the coasts. New York has been doing a lot of that, as has San Francisco and San Diego. And the research I did into their projects, obviously, I don't know anyone working for those projects, but looking at the studies of how those projects have come out, they've worked out very well, and they've not had any issues renting them. Now, granted, Verona is a little different than New York City or San Diego or San Francisco, but they did not have an issue converting the buildings and then filling them. And their hotels were in much more industrial areas than ours is in, and still did not have issues. What they found was that when they converted the housing, the area became less industrial and actually became more residential-like, more neighborhood office. And so it tended to bring things in. But in our situation, obviously, while we don't have the same housing issues that, say, New York City has, it is really difficult to get an apartment in Verona. Most of the places that have been built in the last couple of years, they filled up before they were open. And for a lot of people, that's not really a feasible situation because they can't start paying for an apartment before they leave their old one, you know? Or the timing hasn't worked out because their lease was up 2 months before the new apartment thought they might open. And even with that uncertainty, these apartment buildings are still full. And so there's definitely a huge shortage all over Dane County, actually all over Wisconsin, of housing. And so I don't anticipate there being any issues with filling it. What was the last question?
Yeah,
did we tour a place?
I was wondering if there was anything more local. I understand that there, maybe with larger cities, that there's a lot of different opportunities, but, you know, this seems to be the one that we have. Did you guys, or did you happen to run into or find any other municipalities, just in the state of Wisconsin, that have done something like this?
That have specifically converted a hotel or just run workforce housing?
Well, I'll let you answer it, either one.
Okay. I have not spoken to any local municipalities that have converted a hotel. The studies that I found all focused on bigger cities and bigger organizations doing it. But we do know that, I'm pretty sure, and Luke, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Madison runs workforce housing.
Yeah, Madison has
Yeah.
a much bigger program than this, and I did briefly speak with Mayor Rose Conway, and she said she would make staff available to answer our questions if we had any.
That's what I wanted to know, because if we had someone in the area that's kind of already gone through it, I think it would be good for us to also, if this is a path we decided to go down. So, thank you.
Other feedback? Alder Posey.
Yeah, I think conceptually, I am in support of this concept. I think there's pieces to it that I feel we do need to look at further, and timeline, I don't know if it's going to allow it. I do feel like there's a need for a committee to be part of this conversation so that we have that focus, and maybe it's made up of people from the different committees that we discussed earlier. But also, there's probably a bigger remodel that is needed. I know, it's because when you're thinking about the main entrances, the laundry rooms, all those spaces that are in a hotel, there's a lot of space that would either end up wasted or it will need to be converted. And I think they even have either a pool or jacuzzi area, maybe just outside. So that would need to get addressed too. So I think what I'd love to see is make sure that we're doing it right and not doing it like we go all the way. We're either all in or we're not, I think is my thinking on this, is let's do it right so that the people who are living there feel like it's not second best of Verona and they're like consigned to the Super 8. I even think about like, what's it going to cost to take the sign down? Like that kind of thing. Because I think conceptually, it's a great idea. It's the question of, can we do it and can we do it now in the time frame that this is going to allow us? And then the other piece of that was just a thought on the staffing side, making sure we're going with what the full package cost is, especially if we're looking at us doing the staffing. because all the healthcare, all that side, I'm looking at the numbers, and I think we're potentially missing that. And I'm sure Brian could easily give you an idea as far as full package, what we would have. But I think I'd be in support of potentially having a property management company deal with this. Just, we're not there for, like, this would take expertise. And I don't know that we could get our staff up and running as quickly as we would need to be able to manage this kind of a property and all the things that go along with it. So, but again, conceptually in support, but I want to make sure we do it right so that we're not tripping over ourselves and people's homes along the way.
Other feedback from the council, including Alder Humke.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I agree with Alder Posey and Alder Cronin. I'm conceptually in favor of it as well. I also don't want to rush into anything. I want to make sure we're ducks in a row. I don't want to rush into it and just build it and hope that it works out to only have to resell it. I want to make sure we do it the right way from the get-go and make all the considerations that we need to make. And if that means it doesn't end up happening, like, I think that's the reality of it. So.
That worked well, although I do feel like the volume on is a little loud. Other feedback from the council. Alder Tucker Long.
Just so you know, the staffing numbers that I have in the presentation do include all health insurance and benefits and all city costs associated with those full-time employees. I talked to Brian Lamers and Mitch Weckerly, and those were the numbers they gave me based on the salaries that I asked them about specifically. So that should be the full city cost for those. And then as far as construction that needs to be done on the rooms themselves, they've all been relatively recently remodeled and are in very good condition. And so there's not actually a lot of construction that would need to be done. We may want, like right now, they're all painted kind of an off yellow color. We may want to paint them white, you know, but realistically, there's not a lot of construction that would need to be done in that regard to make it a nice area. There is a pool, it's an indoor pool, but it has not been in use for well over 15 years. And my recommendation would be to cover it over and use that room as like a community room, or we could make it a mixed-use property, perhaps get a daycare in there, because it faces out the side of the building that faces the daycare right on, I'm blanking on the name of the road that goes up towards Farm and Fleet there. And so it's already facing a daycare, so that could potentially be something like that, or a community room, or any number of other things. There's not a laundry room, which is why I included washers and dryers for the rooms in my estimate.
Yep.
Alder Posey.
Sorry, having
then all
worked a little bit of hotel time, so they don't have on-site laundry for their utility space for their staff to be doing sheets and blankets, because usually there is maintenance areas that, you know, this kind of back office end, and that's what I'm saying would have to be remodeled. Usually that's kind of somewhere off on that first floor, hidden slightly away.
Sure. Yeah, it's just adjacent to the main office. When you first walk in, there's the front desk, and the office area is behind there, and just to the right, there is like a large industrial washing machine and dryer that they use for all the sheets and everything like that. But I don't know that that would necessarily be used for the apartment building. I mean, we could repurpose that space for something else, but it's basically in the utilities room is where it is currently. So that wouldn't really be a public room regardless.
I think we'll do Alder Hoke since he hasn't spoken yet, and then back to Alder Posey.
No, I won't take too much time. I think I agree with a lot of what's been said. I guess I'm just concerned if it's been for sale, or why, how come nobody else has bought it yet, right? So like, how come is it not desirable? Because you think with the few hotels we have, it'd be pretty easy to buy something and then just fix it up and then start renting daily, right? And you can make a lot more money. I'm not saying that's what we should do. It just gives me some pause of like, well, what do they know that we don't know? Or, you know, because it's not assessed at 2.3 million. It's assessed at like 2. So just, yeah, I think there's certainly a lot more research we should do. But even looking at like the price of the classic, that's $636 per month, right? our lowest price on the 43 units was like $450 more a month, I think, right? And I think you said that the hotel would be like 400 square feet or something? Like those room, right? That's, I mean, I'm worried that rent, like paying $1,000 to rent a 400 square foot room, like there's elsewhere you could go to get more amenities, more space, right? So I don't want to rush into it and all of a sudden say, oh, I guess we should have done something different, or like just, I think, yeah, for sure, more research and a better plan would be good.
Alder Posey.
Yeah, and mine was just, those spaces would need to be repurposed, because having that space that's then unutilized, that's what I'm saying by going into it with that plan to repurpose those spaces, either into other resident spaces or community spaces, as you said, that being part of this plan and that cost being associated with it, so that we do it right off the bat. And then as far as the further construction, because right now they'd feel like hotel rooms and not like someone's home and apartment, and seeing what we can do about that. Because again, I don't want people who are living there to feel like they're sort of being consigned off to the corner, so that they feel like it actually is a home for them, so.
Other feedback? Alder talking longer than myself.
So, yes, I totally agree with that as far as like the breakfast bar area and the kitchen and things like that, but the washer and dryer are in the utilities closet. So I feel like we couldn't really repurpose that room because like the water heater's in there and the gas lines and all that kind of stuff is in there. So it's not really a space that could be repurposed, but definitely like the breakfast bar area could definitely be repurposed, and it has its own private entrance to the building. So could easily be turned into some sort of housing or a community space that could be rented out, or like an event space or something like that. And then as far as hotels, right now hotels are in kind of a rough spot because they're still recovering from the pandemic. And so there's not as much interest in buying up hotels because they're not necessarily a good investment at the moment. And so that's sort of the, I have a friend who's a realtor, and that was their interpretation of why it didn't sell instantly.
Alder Kimmett, then myself.
So to sort of just bring this back full circle about like why we're having this conversation at all and why Beth took so much time and did a lot of research, it's just sort of, we're trying to gauge, as Luke said, the temperature. We're not going to commit a bunch of staff time to something that we don't think is going to move forward, period. So a lot of these questions that are being raised, that's kind of what we're trying to find out, is if we're having these questions at all, that's great, let's put them forward. But if the immediate answer was going to be, absolutely not, we hate this idea, then it's not worth wasting staff's time. So I'm really happy to hear some of the feedback is more positive, because honestly, I wasn't quite sure when we were coming. I've been pretty nervous. But I just want to reiterate, like, this property is particularly situated in a great place. It's right on the bus line that's about to expand its hours. It's right next to a food bank. It's right next to childcare. It's all these beautiful things. So I understand that there are some things that could be better, committees being one, but there is sort of a sense of urgency to move forward if that is something we can explore, because I don't think there's going to be an ideal, like real estate is never going to be an ideal moment. And so while I think, yes, we need to form these committees for our future, I do think that we should move forward with exploring this opportunity.
Calling on myself, I just wanted to say, I do think, this is more of a summary thing, so I wanted to go last, but I think that there's enough people who are interested in the proposal to at least dedicate some staff time to. Obviously, the first thing would be to have Mr. Kleinmeyer verify that we can do what we want to do legally and with the restrictions that are on the affordable housing thing. And it would also be good to kind of formally reach out to department heads like we would for any other proposal. Just say, hey, there's this proposal, in the same way. Mr. Kleinmeyer?
As you're having this discussion, I do just want you to make you aware that through some of the other work that I do, I am aware that there are developers that are transitioning at least 2 hotels in the city of Madison for affordable housing. And so another option that you might want to consider is partnering with an entity like that, such that if you put money forth, you get to identify then restrictions that you would place on it, on that property manager, but then potentially you don't have to. First of all, you might have more money to spread it around to different projects because you're not the ones who are having to pay for the entire thing. A developer is participating. It also may be then that you don't have to act as the property manager. I'm not trying to cut your discussion off. I just want to make, I heard Mr. Kemp ask a question related to that, and I just wanted to provide that information.
Right. Alder Kemp, I think, and then Alder Tucker-Long.
I was basically going to say what you said, Mr. May. I think that there's enough interest to have at least Attorney Kleinmeyer look at what we can do legally, but he also just piqued my interest in that as another option as well. If we can take a part of this and still pursue this, partnering with someone that the city is comfortable with and do a better job and spend less money and then still have more to do it somewhere else, and maybe not have to manage it, like that to me would make even more sense. So if at all possible, like staying out of the management part is the best, in my opinion, the best thing to do. So maybe that puts a pin in it, but if anyone else has anything else to say, go ahead.
I think I saw a hand up. Alder Tucker-Long?
I just wanted to follow back to what Alder Hook said. The classic property is income restricted. You need to make $12.66 an hour or less, and that's why the rent is so low for that property. So the cheapest property in town that would be comparable for the income bracket that we're talking about, I believe was $12.50 a month, if I'm remembering the number off the top of my head correctly. So that's the number we'd be comparing it to. And also too, the 430 square feet would be the absolute smallest of the rooms, and that's only if we leave it as a one room. Again, there's multiple adjoining rooms. They also have suites that are already bigger, including one-bedroom suites already that are twice the size. So, we don't have to be talking about 430 square feet.
Alder Kimmett?
So to loop in the developer idea, this is something we had discussed. I would, again, we're trying to decide whether it's worth spending any more staff time or Kleinmeyer money on this. Like, it's not worth it if it was a no. So that's definitely something we had batted about. The idea was maybe we would be adding in a middleman that's just siphoning money. So if it winds up being cheaper, great. But I would want to see the actual data of if we're bringing in another company, that's another company that needs money. So I would want to see that that was actually an effective use of taxpayer money. But I do want to remind everybody, like, the intention here is very much see a need, fill a need. And, like, I'm on council because I want to do good things for my community. And this seems like a good thing I could do. So thank you guys for being open to hearing this at all. And yeah, I'm excited to see what staff has to say.
Great. So I think, yeah, next steps will be, and obviously we'll keep everyone informed, but for me to work with Mr. Aulick and Mr. Kleinmeyer and just kind of kick things to department heads and get feedback and then see where we're at. Last chance for comments on this one? Seeing no further comments, we will move to our last item, which is a discussion and possible action regarding the draft lease agreement with the Art House 360 for the city-owned property at 401 West Verona Avenue, including discussion of other issues and possible TIF agreements associated with the property. Can we get a statement in open session before we talk about closed session?
Yes, so a draft, following our last council meeting, Jamie, I think you followed up verbally with Art House 360 and shared some of the discussion that we had and gave them kind of a preview as to what the draft lease would look like. We have shared the draft lease with Art House 360. It was updated from the prior version to incorporate part of the discussion that the Common Council had, specifically, a desire to essentially not act as a true landlord as it relates to maintenance and things of that nature, to incorporate some of the language that they had put in the mission statement for us. I I would expect, or I think there's a good possibility that a revised version or a redline version of that document would come back to the council likely for its first meeting in January. They definitely do need to redline it. There's certainly spots where they're going to have to provide information, so the fact that we get a redline document in and of itself is not going to be problematic. And then, as part of the draft lease that was sent to them, the rent is blank right now. That's part of the discussion that we want to have with you. It does indicate that they would pay all utilities, however. And then as it relates to as part of the discussion that we've had before, we've talked about the idea of potentially providing some TIF assistance. And I think that's really where we want to get into closed session to start talking about maybe terms and conditions of a TIF agreement. Because, I believe that the last meeting they indicated that they would like to move as quickly as possible. And so we definitely do have the ability to work on the TIF agreement at a staff level and potentially have a draft of that to you for the January meeting then if the draft lease agreement is coming back to you.
Mr. Aulick, did you have a comment?
One quick comment. Mr. Jesse Charles did email me late yesterday, letting me know that the council should consider the exterior look of the building as we continue working through the lease.
I mean, I would clarify the historical preservation, not just the look. Because, any comments for open session? I have a question. If when the motions gets made to go into closed session, if, for example, the city planner would like to stick around, would that need to be made specific? Or can it just be generally understood that relevant staff can stay here if they want?
The latter.
The latter, okay. Unless anyone has anything else to say in open session, I would entertain a motion to go into closed session if someone wants to make it. Alder Cronin.
I will make a motion to move into closed session for discussion of possible action regarding draft lease agreement with Art House 360 for city-owned property at 401 West Verona Avenue, including discussion of other issues and possible TIF agreement associated with the property. The Common Council may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin Statute 19.85(1)(e) for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the investing of public funds or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The Common Council may reconvene in open session and take action on the closed session item.
Motion by Alder Cronin, is there a second? Second by Alder Kimmett. This is a roll call vote. If Mr. Aulick would read the roll.
Sure. Kimmett?
Aye.
Camp, yes.
Aye.
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 All right, with that, it passes. We'll be in closed session as soon as we're off the air. I think we're back on now. All right. All right, we had a very productive discussion and expect future updates as we get closer to making a final decision. Unless anyone has anything else to say on this one, I will move to item 12, which is adjournment. Motion to adjourn by Alder Touche. Is there a second? Seconded by Alder Tucker Long. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And we are adjourned at 8:48 p.m. Thank you, everyone. We're back in open.